All right, so we're done with our greeter component, nice and simple component. I now want to move towards making a very simple shopping list application. And I mean very simple. It's essentially a to-do list, but it's for shopping items. So we're going to have our app component, and I think I'm going to keep it simple. We could break this into more components, but we'll have our app component that will render some, I'm going to get rid of the greeter for now, some non-existent at the moment shopping list component, shopping list, and shopping list will render us a bunch of LIs, and it's also going to render some sort of form, maybe a shopping list form or something like that. And then we're going to manage state up in app, probably, just so we can talk about passing things down and props and all of that. But like I said, very simple to start. We're going to make a shopping list component that will then hopefully make our app happy so we don't get an error from that line. So I'm going to go to my components directory and make a shoppinglist.tsx file. And I'll import React if I can type correctly, import React, and we'll do an export default shopping list, just like that. And I need the function keyword. All right, so here's our function shopping list. We can be specific. If we want to avoid any chance that we don't return an element, we can explicitly annotate it. And then in here, we'll return, I'm thinking, a div to start. And in this div, we'll have an h1 that says shopping list, and then a UL that has some LIs, like item 1. I'll just put that in there to start. We need parens. I use auto format in VS Code, but that's me being lazy. We do need parens around this. Okay, so let's now make sure we can render that. If I import shopping list in our app, we should be able to render our shopping list. And there's our beautiful shopping list. It's getting styles from this div, the class name of app. I'm just going to get rid of that class name. That's just the built-in create React app styles. All right, so there's our item 1. So what I'd like to do is have some sort of data that, let's call it items to start, that's an array. And it's an array of objects where each object represents one of these items in our shopping list. So that could be an ID for sure, right? They'll need to have an ID. Let's just make some starter data, ID of 1. And then a product name maybe, like lemon. And then a quantity. And let's just start with those. So let's say I need 3 lemons. And then I'll have one more, ID of 2. Product is chicken breast. And quantity will be 2. All right, so we now have items. And let's just write in here, instead of our UL, let's map over that. Items.map for each item. I'll call it item. I'm going to return an li that has the item dot product name in there. Let's just make sure that works. And we'll get a warning about not having the key prop. So let's use the ID, right? Key equals, and then item dot ID. And then for now, just add a dash here, or hyphen dash, which one is that? Either way, the little horizontal line. And then we'll add in the quantity, which will be item dot quantity. And there we are. Okay, works great. Beautiful, isn't it? So what I want to do now is move this items array up to the app component. Usually we have, a higher component managing state. We're not going to introduce state in this video, but it will be our next thing we do. But I'm going to pass this data down as if it was coming from some component that was managing state. So I'm going to just copy this, or actually cut it out. We're going to have an error all across this component and put it in my app component. So let's pretend this is our application state. It's called items. I need to be able to pass that down to shopping list, right? So I could try and pass a prop, items equals, and then just do items like that. But I'm going to get an error. What's the error I get? It says type items, blah, blah, blah. It's not assignable to type intrinsic attributes. Property items does not exist. This is the error we saw earlier in the previous video when we tried to pass props to a component that wasn't set up to accept any parameters. So we just need to go down to our shopping list component and make sure that we define the props that it's going to expect, the type of those props specifically. So I like to do it with an interface. We'll call this shopping list props. And I usually just do it in this one file. This isn't going to be shared across, a different component. If it is, then we could export it or put it in a shared file. But this is just the props for this one particular component. So we're saying you're going to get something called items. And now we have to decide, how are you going to structure this? Items is going to be an array, but we're not just going to say it's an array of some objects like this. We want to type it and say it's an array of shopping list items, right? It needs to have, each element has an ID that's a number, product that's a string, quantity that's a number. So what I could do is write an interface up here called item that just says ID is a number, right? And then we could have product is a string and quantity is a number. And then I can say items will be an array of type item. So now I have to find, for now, the only prop that it should expect is items, which is going to be an array of type item. And then I just need to say, okay, you're going to get this props thing, and it's going to be of type shopping list props. And then down here, I can go ahead and access props.items. And that should do it for us, and we're back to working just fine. So we did have to do a little bit of work that we wouldn't do with plain old React and JavaScript, but now we get all the benefits of TypeScript. If something changes, if I try and access something that doesn't exist on our props, I'm going to get a warning. If I misspell this, if I call this shopping items, TypeScript is going to yell at me and say, what are you doing? That doesn't exist. So let's go back. Now it also knows that each item is of type item, which sounds obvious when I say it out loud, but it knows there's an ID that's a number. There's a product that's a string. There's a quantity that's a string. And for now, this is okay, the way this is set up, although we may end up reusing this item interface, so we might want to move it into a separate file. But for now, this is fine. We've got to start. I probably would destructure our props. So this is kind of long here. It's not that long, but instead of doing props.items, what you'll see all the time is just destructuring this to grab the thing we want. Now, I think this is kind of ugly, but it's also short and very React-y. I just think it gets a little messy to try and read all this. It's very long. It's just the parameter list is really long. But anyway, it works. Don't listen to me being a downer about React.